Hello everybody and welcome back to Chaos Head. I am recording these two parts back to back just so I can get them out of the way. Like I said, these parts are going to probably stick closer to the 30-minute mark than usual because, like I said, I have some personal stuff going on that just doesn't really quite have me in the mood, but I also don't want it to interfere too much with the channel, and so I am going ahead and recording these as per usual. Just like I said, they might be a little bit shorter than the norm. Get my timer started and hop right back in. Sarah, laying fallen over on my desk, smiled like an angel and spoke to me gently. Yes, the only data that a online game like an MMO should be storing on your device beyond the normal game data is your settings regarding things like keybinds, sound levels, graphic settings, things like that. Character data should never be stored on a client's machine for an MMO, because that just opens up the potential ability, if you don't have a means of verifying that the data has not been tampered with, for people to go ahead and modify the character themselves. I mean, theoretically, you could, hash their character data and store that server side, and if they modify it, you compare your hash stored on the server to their local hash, and if it's different, then you say they modify the data and they can't use the character. By servers, you mean the company's administrative servers. Well, it wouldn't be administrative servers, it would be game servers. Literally game servers, not servers meant for administrative purposes. Whoa, yeah. Thanks to my misty consciousness, I'd forgotten something that basic. I feel like I discovered a single ray of hope in the midst of despair. Just what I'd expect from my wife. I regretted the loss of my precious Moe illustration collection and MP3s, which I hadn't backed up, but I had no choice except to give them up. Even so, I wanted to commence the work of reinstalling my OS as soon as possible, or as soon as I could. I also wanted to confirm the safety of my ESO save data with my own eyes as soon as possible. Although, before anything else happened, I needed the headache currently torturing me to subside. Well, before you get around to doing a completely fresh install of your OS, I would check to make sure that after the physical data dump, potentially you're still able to boot in. Just because you get a red screen once, you get the R sod instead of the B sod once, doesn't necessarily mean that all is lost. You might be able to still boot in after it goes through this once. Admittedly, I would still do a reinstall afterwards, but at least it gives you a chance to potentially try and back up your data before you do that fresh install. But I very much doubted this pain would do me the favor of disappearing anytime soon. Oh, okay, I could have had the last episode go for an extra minute, I guess that would have been, realistically, without my interjections. It was typical for commercials or famous singers' music videos to be playing on the Jumbotron located in the Shibuya Station Plaza. Currently projected on it, however, was the solemn face of a female newscaster, which is a little hard to tell because the way the projection works, it's very broken up by the windows here. It was a special TV broadcast. On the upper left-hand side were displayed sensational words. Upper left-hand side? I mean, unless this is actually an inverted projection, depending on how the projection is set up, that's, for us, actually upper right-hand side. Earthquake in Shibuya, over 200 casualties? Earthquakes were an everyday occurrence in Japan. Even in the capital metropolitan area, magnitude 5 earthquakes were known to have taken place myriad of times. But as the mass media gathered information, it became clear that this earthquake in particular had produced a bizarrely large number of casualties. Its strangeness was especially apparent when one compared it to the magnitude 5 earthquake in 2005, which had resulted in 0 casualties. Okay, so this is sometime after 2005, so maybe 2006 or 7. Like I said, I believe ChäoS said Noah pushed the game up to like 2008. Because for whatever reason, pushing the date an extra year or two had some sort of effect on the story they wanted to tell. I don't know why, but it did, I guess. And on top of all things, the earthquake had centered around Shibuya, the subject of close scrutiny throughout Japan thanks to the new-gen cases. An earthquake had also happened in Shibuya about 3 months ago. 8 deaths had emerged at the time, despite the fact that it was only a magnitude 3 earthquake. Perhaps Shibuya is cursed. The people who laid eyes on initial reports about the new earthquake may not have given voice to this, but all of them surely thought it. In any case, all the individual stations began broadcasting special programming almost as soon as the earthquake started. Information was currently complicated, and though the full count remained unclear, the female newscaster read off her notes, stating, "According to an announcement by the Fire and Disaster Management Agency, 31 fatalities have been confirmed at present, and it is believed the number will continue to rise. Furthermore, the cause of death is currently unknown." Additionally, news kept coming in about the mysterious white light that had attacked Shibuya, and the ensuing shockwave and the transformation of the sky from blue to white. The cameras affixed at regular points throughout Shibuya's pedestrian scramble had caught that light on tape, and the Jumbotron kept playing a film where the screen went completely white as the earthquake ended. The discoloration that had begun together with the earthquake had at first been more of a searing light than simply white. The Shibuya had momentarily been enveloped in a flash whose brightness stopped everyone from opening their eyes. If this were an earlier and more warlike era, people would doubtlessly have imagined it to be a nuclear weapon. There were some who actually spotted a white mushroom cloud floating several hundred meters above Shibuya, though it soon disappeared. Yet no one had any idea about what the source of the light might have been, or how it could be related to the earthquake. Mysteriously, the white-dyed sky returned to its original color in less than an hour, and now the air above the people of Shibuya was covered in a somber blue, as though nothing had happened. The asphalt of Dugan Hill bore extremely minuscule fissures, each of them hardly more than a millimeter. Moreover, mixed-use buildings and other structures in the shopping center had also grown diminutive crevices on the surfaces of their walls. My headache still wouldn't let up. It had taken close to 2 hours to reinstall my OS. I don't think it takes 2 hours to install a modern OS. Obviously, older ones might take longer, particularly because you're more than likely installing on a hard drive, especially in 2005 or 2006, again, whenever it is exactly this game takes place. But 2 hours still seems a little excessive. You know, I was a part of an IT program in my high school, and we would be installing OSs on computers that would be given away. And it did not take 2 hours to install an OS on a single machine. Even just to install the base OS on a single drive so you could then clone that hard drive to make life a little bit easier. But still, to install that first one did not take 2 hours. Those were on hard drives. And they weren't gaming hard drives. They were probably your normal 5400 RPM hard drives, not the 7200 RPM hard drives. And they were also very old hard drives, because generally those machines we were given were declassified systems that were being given away by various companies and whatnot, because they were replaced with something newer, better. that wasn't so damn sluggish and slow for their use case. Whatever. Still shouldn't take 2 hours to install your OS, just to install it. We're not talking like restoring from backups and shit. Midway through, the pain had me lose consciousness a number of times. I dozed off at the computer before, but this was the first time I'd actually passed out. Okay, maybe it took 2 hours because he kept losing consciousness. I guess I could make it take 2 hours. Even so, the pain had mostly retreated compared to 2 hours earlier. I wet my throat by drinking some Coke and mustered my energy. I returned my toppled bed to its original position and cleared some space on the floor to walk around in. But, doing these things took considerable effort due to how my body refused to work up any strength, but I wouldn't be able to leave the room if I didn't clean up. It'd be worse if during Shogun's next attack, although I didn't know if it were really him or not, I found myself trapped in here and couldn't run away. I needed to guarantee myself an escape route. Dude, there's one way out of your frickin' base. There's no way you can have an escape route unless you had a two-sided or a two-door container with a door on one end of the container and another set of doors on the other end of the container. In which case your PC would be blocking the other set, so you still wouldn't really have an easy escape route. You're kind of shit out of luck no matter what you do in this scenario. In any case, once I had finished rearranging things and reformatting my OS, you don't reformat your OS, you reformat your drive and install your OS. I swiftly faced my PC and installed the ISO. I attempted logging into Baselard.
やった。ナイトハルトは消えてない。装備とかも全部無事だ。よかった。
My excessive emotion almost drove me to leap from my chair and pump a fist into the air, but even that was exhausting, and I stopped myself halfway. Even so, I was overjoyed to be able to meet my alter ego again, after thinking he had disappeared forever. Let's see. Now that I was relieved, I started wanting to find out about what on earth had happened in the first place. It was enough to give me the urge to sue someone for damages. It had seemed like an earthquake, but that alone left too many things unexplained. I checked to see if Grimm were in Baselard, but I couldn't find him. I tried going to our usual chat room. My bookmark for it had disappeared, so it took a while to find, but Grimm wasn't there either. What was with him, vanishing on me at such a crucial time? I had no recourse but to open up the Taboo homepage. Let's see, over 200 casualties in Shibuya at 12:07. Over 300 injured in Shibuya at 12:49. A magnitude 5 earthquake in the Kanto region. There was some news article. There was some news headlined with over 200 casualties in Shibuya. Apparently, an earthquake had occurred. After all, magnitude 5. The number of casualties was awfully high. They said chances were strong that it would continue to mount even beyond 200. Well, going by the projection we were informed about via the Jumbotron, presumably in this case when they say casualties, they're referring more so to deaths, not necessarily just injuries. You know, this is one of those cases where casualties typically refers to deaths, not deaths, injured, missing in action, etc. Normally, you know, that's a little bit more military when casualties is used in that sense. When you're talking natural disaster, casualty often more so tends to refer to straight up deaths when it comes to the reporting. So it's interesting that they're titled like this. Of course, granted, I'm also applying US, sort of how headlines tend to be written here in the US. Maybe it's different in Japan when a natural disaster occurs. There were also reports that the sky over Shibuya had temporarily turned white and that a vast mushroom cloud had risen, but no one seemed to be aware of how those were connected to the earthquake. They had pounced on it over at @channel as well, with a lot of people posting things, threads like Shibuya again and Shibuya is over, isn't it? They don't put the question mark for Shibuya is over, isn't it? They put it as a statement, which is an interesting decision. Videos had been uploaded, ones that showed film from the traffic cameras at the pedestrian scramble.
これ、地震だけじゃないよね。
Would the cameras at the pedestrian scramble really have visibility of the sky, though? Because I'd assume that they'd be facing generally more towards the ground, towards the road, for example. The idea being to potentially catch people who try to, I guess, speed through the pedestrian scramble. You know, potentially hit pedestrians who are attempting to cross, things like that. So, I mean, they might have a little bit of visibility of the sky, but I wouldn't think much. At the time, I had been attacked by a horrific headache. It wasn't even at the level where you could call it a headache. It had felt as though the inside of my skull were boiling. I don't think any way a headache, no matter how bad, would ever feel like the inside of your skull is boiling. I don't think it works that way, realistically. Even now, 2 hours later, it had left a pulsing pain and a limp heaviness behind in my body.
電子レンジに閉じ込められたら、あんな風になるかもしれない。
When I thought of it that way, I had the sense that maybe my paranoid delusions about it being an electromagnetic attack set off by Shogun weren't completely mistaken. Right then, I heard a familiar noise from my PC. It was a sound that rang out whenever someone entered a chat room. Maybe Grim had entered. Reckoning I would ask him for the details, I flickered my eyes toward this chat window. Ruh-roh. An unthinking shriek spilled from my throat when I saw that name. Such impeccable timing. Could it be that he really was peeping in on my thoughts? The hand gripping my mouse quivered. I was so terrified that it went rigid, and even the pain in my head flew straight away. Even though I hated merely looking at the word Shogun, I couldn't rip my eyes away from the monitor. I wanted to leave the chat room, but I'd received such a shock that it was as though my body had been cut away from my consciousness, and I couldn't control the mouse. A prickling sensation at the back of my neck. Someone was watching me again. God's gaze. Or rather than anything resembling God, might it in fact be the gaze Shogun sent down from the satellite's orbit? Ugh, I want to know, or I want to run away. But where to? He'd catch me no matter where I fled in Japan. Long time no see. That was the first thing he said. With the lightness of someone greeting a friend he hadn't come across for a while. But I had absolutely zero recollection of being friendly with him. I was left to chew at my lip and watch the words displayed on the monitor. Oops, accidentally double-clicked. But the post by Shogun galvanized me, letting my petrified body move freely again, and I soon groped for my cell phone. It was a little past 3, classes might still be going on. Even so, Remy would do something about it for me. I had to believe this. I would think in this case you probably would cancel classes. Realistically. You had a magnitude 5 earthquake. Apparently a bunch of people in the school, going by what we saw with Yua, had just issues, collapsing, frothing at the mouth, things like that. I would think you would cancel classes at that point. And where possible, send people back home to their family. I picked Remy's cell phone number out of the short list of items recorded in my address book.
助けて、リミ。リミ、早く。出て。
Do you hate me? It hurt to breathe. I couldn't think about anything calmly. I just noticed that Shogun had said that. I was probably a couple lines back. Remy wouldn't pick up. Beyond the phone, the monotonous sound of my call to her went on ringing. Why now? Didn't you always come materialize in front of me whenever I found myself in trouble? Why now, of all times? I'll send you a present. Present? Did he feel like sending me another one of those? And this time, he'd set me up as the real new-gen perp for sure. No, I don't want that. I'm not the criminal. It felt like I had become a fish stranded on land. I wasn't getting enough oxygen. My head went fuzzy. Rimi was my last hope. Gripping the phone harder and harder, I concentrated all my attention on the other end of the line, as though praying. It went through.
助けて。
留守番電話サービスにおつなぎします。
I'll be delighted if it pleases you. Her voicemail? No. Crushed, I ended the call. I hugged my upper arms. I think we've done green the past one or two times. Well, I'm pretty sure we did green last time, and I think we might have done green the time before that as well, actually. So let's mix things up a little bit and do a red. At some point, my body had started trembling. I dreaded Shogun even more than I thought. Of course I did. He was a serial killer who'd caused 5 incredibly cruel incidents, all while pretending to be disabled. And I was his next mark.
助けてよ。
The sound of someone banging on the door came just then, as if they'd waited for the right timing.
リミ。
It was Rimi. Rimi had come for me after all. Feeling as though my salvation had arrived, I headed for the door. But I stopped partway there. What if it's not Rimi, of course? Why was she pounding so hard?
リミ。
I tried calling out to the person behind the door. The knocking sound stopped at once. Silence. No reply. Give me some kind of answer. Why don't you say anything?
リミ。なんでしょう。答えてよ。
Without offering a reply, they started hammering at the door again. It wasn't Rimi.
誰だ。誰なんだ。
Surely not Shogun. Once I started harboring suspicions, I lost the courage to open the door and determine who stood beyond it. I retreated slowly until at last I hit the backrest of my chair. The knocking went on and on all the while. Someone kept on knocking. No, it wasn't just that. The sound of knocking began reverberating from the side walls and the ceiling as well. The person outside wasn't alone.
誰だよ。
Unable to tamp down my fear, I shouted. As if in reaction to my voice, the sound stopped at once. I wanted to flee. I wanted to run away. I wanted to go far away from this place immediately. But how? Surely there was some mystery group surrounding the container housing from outside. Noises began to resonate again. This time, rather than a knocking sound, it was the unpleasant sound of fingernails scratching. Is that what fingernails scratching on a metal shipping container would sound like? It's a little hard to tell because of the music playing in the background, but I don't think that's quite right. Being unable to see my opponent's forms only strengthened my fear. I knew Shogun had instigated them, but I couldn't imagine what these people, who were harassing me from a single wall's width away, possibly looked like. Goosebumps stood up all over me, and revulsion heightened my nausea. I covered my ears hard.
やめて。やめてよ。許してよ。
Oh, Shogun left. Well, I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna be a bit shorter because I feel like that's actually a decent place to stop. So we're going to go ahead and end this part here, a little bit shorter than the last part, and a little bit shorter than the 30 minutes minimum that I basically shoot for with this series in particular. But yeah, so I will see you all next time. A quick reminder that I do have a Patreon and a Discord. I do highly recommend that you join the Discord so you can stay up to date on what's going on with the channel, because that is generally the only place that I tend to post that type of stuff. I often just don't remember to post it anywhere else, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So if you want to know about potential changes to my recording or streaming schedule, that is going to generally be the best place to go for that type of information. As for my Patreon, that is one of two major ways to support the channel, particularly when it comes to this series, which does not have any affiliate links down below for being able to purchase the game at least. Patreon is a way to support the channel monthly. You do get the extra goodies of early access to videos as a result of this, and access to a Patreon's only channel in the Discord. Obviously, it's not very active because my Discord is not very active in the first place, and I don't have any patrons right now. The other major way to support the channel, and is really probably the better way to support the channel if you want to make sure the channel gets the most of whatever it is the support you provide is probably going to be the Streamlabs, because there's less middlemen that take fees, and even those that do take fees I think are actually lower compared to the fee that Patreon takes on top of the transfer fee, which admittedly isn't that much to actually put it into my bank account. But yeah, so those are two of the ways to support the channel. If you do it via Streamlabs, you don't get any of the goodies that the Patreon provides, even if you do a monthly donation via Streamlabs, but it does help the channel out immensely. Theoretically, I could try to find some way to provide those goodies. I just don't have a good way of necessarily confirming and automating that process, but theoretically it might be possible. So maybe that's something I'll look into in the future. But yeah, so that'll be it for this video. Like I said, I will see you all next time. Until then, goodbye and farewell.